launch, we all had to sit on a computer all night long while they go through their countdown. Computers were so primitive at that time. I mean, and they were so unreliable. To go through a countdown took all night long. Finally, the next morning, we were about ready to launch, and about 8 o'clock. And all of a sudden, the word came over from the launch director, launch has been scrubbed, and we're going to drain and come back in 3 days. And my God, I went back to the motel and went to sleep. Was pooped, been up all night long. But then the interesting thing about, then I found out what the real reason, they said due to mechanical difficulties. Yeah, mechanical difficulties. What it really was, those flyboys got together and had a big party the night before out on the beach.
Oh.
And along about midnight, they said, let's all go skinny dipping. So they all took their clothes off and went in the ocean. And had a big time. And then the next morning, before they took off, they had to go up and walk through to past the flight surgeon, and he looked at them and listened to their heart and their lungs and so forth. And they got to one of them, I don't remember which one it was. He said, "You can't go." He says, "You got congestion in the head, and you can't. We can't permit that in 0G." Because nasal congestion isn't good. It tends to plug up your whole breathing apparatus.
Huh.
So we're going to have to, you can't fly it, and we'll give you some antibiotics, and maybe in 3 days we'll be good enough to fly. So ever since then they were quarantined. But they weren't going to tell the public that what had happened, that these boys had been out partying all night the night before and skinny dipping in the ocean. And so it was technical difficulties.
Oh, wow.
But we knew what it was. They never did that again. In fact, when you remember when the first guys came back from the moon?
Well, no, we weren't alive, but tell us.
I know they had like a parade.
Well, no, not that. We didn't have a place for them to land. So they decided, well, we'll use the Pacific Ocean and we'll send the Navy out and recover them. I mean, remember, they're coming back by parachute and nose cone. And you couldn't steer it exactly. So if we could get within 10 miles of it, then that's good. So that's what they did. And they landed in the ocean. And they had the Navy out there, and the Navy would pick them up and bring them in. But they had a movie going around about that time about some disease coming in from outer space. It was devastating the human race. All fanciful. Wow. And so they said, hey, maybe that is a space. Maybe they'll get something in space and bring it back to the Earth and we'll all be dead or something. So they quarantined them. They put them on a ship, and they were literally put them on a ship and put them in a quarantine quarters, like a house trailer, on the carrier, and they had to stay in there. I think it was 4, 5, 6 days to see if anything generated that would be harmful to the rest of the population. Since nothing did, they only did it about twice.
Huh. Oh, wow.
But they even had some real close calls that nobody ever heard about when they were picking them up. These guys coming back in the Pacific, everything looks good on television.
I know they had one that was like, it was like starting to sink or something.
Yes.
But the astronauts got out, but then the helicopter like had to drop it or something, and then it just like sunk into the ocean or something.
Well, that's sort of it. What happened was, okay, they had steering chemicals on board that they were injected into a nozzle and they would immediately flash, burn. Didn't have to be ignited. You just squirt them into a container, into a jet nozzle, and they turn into they fire automatically. They were used to exactly position the capsule as you're coming back from outer space. They had to be pointed directly down, not canted a little bit up one way or the other, because you could. It had to be that way, or it would tumble, and you couldn't permit it to be tumbled because you only had the heat shield on one end. And so, but then they realized that these explosive propellants were also very incompatible with water. When it hit the water, and all these propellants will explode.
Oh.
So they say, hey, what are we going to do? And so they wrote back into the procedures. They're coming back when he's out about 50,000 feet or something like that thing, and coming in like a bandit. Pull this lever over here and reject all the fluids on board, because we don't want them to be in the capsule when we hit the water. Okay, that's fine. Difficulty. So they did, and they squirted it, and the thing went up, and of course the capsule was coming down, and so all these liquids went up there, and they were caught in the parachutes, and promptly started to dissolve the parachutes.
Oh man!
Hey, oops! Another oops! We never thought of that. And all of a sudden, the parachute started disintegrating like crazy. And so they hit the water, hitting pretty darn hard on that one. They changed that procedure in a hurry. So they never did that again. Now, for a while, they said, well, that goes down, and maybe that thing will sink or this kind of stuff. So the procedure called for blow the hatch when they get down in the water, blow the hatch and come out, and then the SEALs will be out there, and they'll pick you up in a helicopter or a raft or something and take you back to the carrier. Well, that's fine. I forget this guy's name. But he came out like he was supposed to, and he came out and went in the water, and the SEALs were a few feet away, but he was doing like he was supposed to do, but the SEALs were still, I don't know, 20 feet away, and they hadn't quite got there with their raft, and his flight suit started filling up with water.
Oh.
And he was filling up with water, and he was sinking, and he was going down for the third time when they got a hand on him. The SEALs went in the water and got him and pulled him back out of the water and saved his life. But it was never again did they ever get out of the capsule again. Next time, we stay in the capsule, and we lift the whole damn capsule out of the water and put it on the boat. Of course, the capsule sank, and it almost took one of the astronauts with it, and then they'd had mud on their face. But these are some of the human side that people never hear anything about.
Oh yeah.
The guy came within a whisker of drowning. His flight suit was all full of water. He couldn't swim. It was weighing him down.
Maybe he was worried about his mom being angry that they got their shoes wet, like you. Going out into Mission Bay.
Tell that story. I'm not sure what he's talking about, so tell that story.
Oh, that's another story way
But
back
tell
then.
it now.
Oh, what? At one time we lived in California, in Pacific Beach.
Weren't you like 8 or 9 or so?
Let me see now. We were third grade. No, about 9, I guess it was. And Harold and I were down on Mission Bay, and there was a dredge there, and he was dredging out the channel. They collect a lot of mud flats. There was mud keeps coming in there, and I'm not. Maybe it comes in. I don't know where the mud comes from, but they have a lot of mud, and they have to keep dredging out the channels in Mission Bay. And there was this dredge sitting off the shore, maybe 150 feet, 200 feet, something like that thing. And then it had a long pipe that came ashore, and this is where they would discharge the stuff that they dredged up off the bottom of the bay, see? They had to maintain their channels. And of course, like any silly young kid, hey, let's go out there, let's walk out. And so I could get on this pipe. It was about that big around. And you could walk on that, and so I was walking on out there. And about half of the way out, and I couldn't swim a stroke. I didn't know a thing, so I'm walking on out there. And I don't know exactly why, but somehow or other I slipped off into the bay. But it was right there, and I grabbed hold of the pipe and climbed back up on it, and came back on the land. But then I'm soaking wet, and I can't go home. And my first thing she's gonna say, "Hey, how'd you get so wet?" So Harold and I had to fool around down there until I dried out enough I could go home.
That's actually a different story than I was thinking of. I was talking about the one where you built a raft.
Oh, that was another time. Yeah. We did, we couldn't swim, but there was a place around there where there was some, I think there were, some of them were in the water and some of them were stacked up old rejected cross ties, railroad cross ties. And we put some together, and we tied them together with some rope that was around there. And then we got a pole, and we were out there in the channel poling away on our raft like Tom Sawyer.
Oh, wow.
Until the rope wasn't tied too well or something. We weren't very good Boy Scouts at that time. And it started coming apart. And here's a couple of non-swimmers out there in the channel, and the boat's coming apart. Oh boy, the crazy things guys get into.